All right. Hello. So, welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about why we are afraid to rest. We're going to be talking about why there is this deep fear that a lot of us have around resting or taking a break or letting ourselves receive help or asking for help, and how many of us, it might not even feel like a fear or a phobia, but more like when we try to rest, when we try to get ourselves to get into a place where we're relaxing or whatever, it doesn't feel good. We feel guilty, we feel overwhelmed, we feel a bunch of negative emotion that comes up when we try to rest. And yeah, especially the guilt, the feeling of just like we're not doing enough, we're not producing enough, who are we to rest, all of that. And then I also want to talk kind of about the flip side of the coin, where we might feel like we have a really hard time motivating ourselves, where it just feels like no matter what we do, we always just feel like we're never able to actually be productive, we're never able to actually like move forward in our lives no matter how hard we try. And I want to talk about kind of how these two things are just flip side of the same coin, the same trauma that we're all kind of dealing with here. So, to be totally transparent, right? I am one of these people who have had a very difficult time with rest, and um, really prone to pushing myself way past my limits, and and going into burnout and continuing on with that even though I was totally burnt out, and learning a bunch of ways to just like cope with being exhausted all the time and going forward anyway, and really feeling like I just did not deserve to ever take a break. There have been times in my life, like when we lived in Vancouver years ago, where literally every single minute of every single day of mine was completely scheduled. Like I would fill every single minute with some activity, um, with some productivity, something. Always working more than working one or two jobs, going to school, exercising, preparing food, cleaning, taking care of the house, never asking for help, trying to be the perfect girlfriend, trying to be the perfect housewife, essentially at the time, and literally would, yeah, like push myself to the point of physical exhaustion, physical illness. Like I would get a lung infection every year. I've talked about this, and my digestive health was terrible, and my I would literally be like swollen and inflamed, and my body was on fire. My joints were starting to hurt, like in my 20s, and this kind of thing. And I would still keep pushing. I would still keep pushing through, and anytime I ever got to a place where I like didn't have something to do, I would feel this like crushing sensation inside my body. Like I don't really know how else to describe it. It would just feel like the world was caving in on me, and it was just like this dark, heavy, looming cloud. And I would have thoughts in my head like, who are you to rest? Like, who are you to take time off? Who are you to take a break? Like, you don't deserve this. There are so many people out there, like there are single mothers, there are people who are actually sick or really in poverty, and living in situations where they have absolutely no rights and no freedoms, and you don't deserve to take a break. There's too much suffering in the world. There's too much going on. You are not worthy of rest. You are not worthy of taking care of yourself. Those were a lot of my stories, and a lot of it too was, like I said, there was just like this physical side to it where I just like I couldn't necessarily explain why it felt so terrible to rest, but it just really felt bad. And like I said, so then over the years, my husband would just watch me push myself and push myself and push myself, especially in my work, of just constantly having a project, constantly having something going on. Like no matter how I kind of like changed my life to be more and more like we were more and more financially stable, and we were getting to these places where I didn't need to be working all the time. And but I ran my own company, so that always made it that it was like work was always available and I could always be doing something. And again, he just kind of watched me over and over and over again run myself into the ground, and it was affecting our relationship really bad because of course my being so exhausted and so burnt out and so overwhelmed all the time with never resting and never taking a break and all these things was very stressful. And then it caused me to be in a state of stress all the time. But like, and I kind of think this was an inverse relationship as well. I was in a state of stress all the time, and work was my coping mechanism at the same time, right? So there was all of that going on. And then like I said, just the like absolute incapacity to ask for help on any level, just like, and even and so to the point of like getting so exhausted, getting so burnt out, getting so, I just was not taking care of myself and was trying to take care of everybody else and trying to do everything for everybody else and being kind of a doormat and letting people walk all over me and way overextending myself, even like in my work, just having absolutely no boundaries, letting people just like, everyone private messages me with their stuff, and I would just one-on-one coach everyone for free, and like all this stuff was going on. And like I said, and then if I ever did end up kind of breaking down and needing some help, I would just feel so guilty about it, and then I would just try and make up for it as much as possible. And so like, if you're kind of one of these people who feels this way, like you you constantly feel like you're not good enough, you're not doing enough, and there's all this stress around trying to rest or trying to relax. And like, especially now, right, like the self-help and the self-love world continually telling us we're supposed to be doing self-care and taking baths and doing all these things. And you might just be like, yeah, like I don't know how to do that. It feels terrible when I try to do that. I have so much fear around resting. And then now you're being told that you lack self-love because you can't rest and you can't take care of yourself, and you can't ask for help, and there's something wrong with you that you can't ask for help, and you're doing self-love wrong now because, right, you're supposed to be able to rest and you're supposed to be able to ask for help, but if you can't do those things, you're failing at self-love now. So just another thing to add to your list of I am sucking at life, right? So this is kind of what I want to speak to today, is that first things first, I want you to understand, right? If we zoom out and we take a large perspective of humanity, it is absolutely not your fault that you would have fear around resting. And then here's the one other thing too, is that I know a lot of people who have gotten themselves to a place where they like realize they're burnt out, they realize they hate their life, they realize they don't want to be in the matrix, they do all that, and then they decide, okay, well, what, I'm gonna leave, right? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna just like get, I'm gonna quit my life, right? I'm gonna go figure out what I want. I'm gonna go figure out who I am. I'm gonna rest, and then I'm gonna like find myself. And so they leave their job, or they leave their spouse, or they leave their relationship, they move to a tropical island, they do something radical like this, like I say, or they quit the job, they do whatever. And then rather than being able to like take 6 months or a year or whatever it is to like find yourself or to actually rest and to actually relax and see if you can get into this place where you can start to listen to your intuition or figure out what you really want with your life or any of these things. You're just in this constant stress state of like, I gotta figure it out, I gotta figure it out, I gotta figure it out. And like, I'm supposed to be resting and I should be getting answers and I should be knowing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm just, I'm not getting answers. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I quit the thing. I left. I did what you're supposed to do, and now I'm resting. But you just feel adrenaline all the time, and you feel trauma all the time. And you just feel like there's this constant, like, you got to figure it out. 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 And then the fear of having to go back, and that's kind of like the only thing you know. That old life is what you know. and you don't want to go back to it, but you don't feel like you know anything. And then there's also the getting to the place where you're resting with this expectation that you're going to figure out what you want to do with your life, that you're going to figure out what your passion is, that you're going to figure out what your purpose is. And like if you just give yourself time and space to rest and time and space to relax, you'll get all these answers. And like I said, and then instead you just have anxiety, you just have constant chronic like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, I don't know who I am, and or like debilitating exhaustion and maybe depression and just like this feeling of like you're never going to be enthusiastic about anything again, you're never going to be happy again, you have absolutely no energy for anything, maybe you even have some like ideas of things that you want to do or places you want to go or some little things, but everything just feels like way too much work, it's too hard, and you just feel completely exhausted. Okay, so then there's that other fear of rest where we can say, and I've been there too, right? I'm afraid of resting because I'm so exhausted. Like I can feel that I'm so exhausted. I can feel that there's so much fatigue and there's so much unknown and there's so much heaviness that if I actually let myself admit how exhausted I am or admit how tired I am or like stop, if I let myself stop, I'm never going to go again because I'm so exhausted and I have no hope and I have no idea what I want, or even if I do have an idea of what I want, it's too hard. I'm too exhausted. Everything feels like work. Everything sounds like it's too hard and I'm never going to want to do it anyways. And I remember that too, like just the running on the what I call toxic fuel, the running on the stimulating myself into action constantly through these stories of not good enough, you don't deserve to rest, if you rest you'll never get back up again, like you've got to keep this momentum going. And so what I want to kind of like I say come back to is what I learned for myself was, first things first, all those stories of everyone else is suffering so much more than you aren't worthy, you aren't good enough, you don't deserve to take a break. If you like, who are you to take a break? The world that has so many people out there who are suffering so much more than you, who are doing so much more than you, like who are you to even be exhausted? What's wrong with you? And like this constant like the world is on fire. Who are you to rest? The world is like, you should be doing something. You should be making a difference. You should be doing things better. Bye, my Bubba. I love you. You should be doing better. You should be better. Like all these scary stories. What I found for myself is that number one, like those stories are, like I say, providing a kind of they were providing a kind of toxic fuel for me. They were how I stimulated my nervous system, stimulated my adrenaline response, so that I could override my exhaustion and keep going. Okay, so like, it's not to say that it's not true, that there are a lot of things that are wrong in this world and a lot of people who are suffering, and that I, just like everyone else, am here to play a role in the collective making things better for everybody, right? Like, my life is not just about my own freedom and my own liberation and my own getting what I want. I believe that a true spiritual life is, how do I figure out who and what I am and what I have to give to the collective? Yeah, that we're not one or the other. It's not sacrifice yourself completely for the collective, and it's not live just for yourself and the only thing is to make yourself happy. It's that we need to understand that we are all individuals who have something to offer the collective. And when we're really living our purpose, we are, those two things are, we're melding those two things. We're figuring out like the unique thing that we have to offer and how that serves to be something for everyone. Yes? And so this like constant like, you should be doing more, 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 was how I was, like I say, stimulating my adrenaline to push myself to act and to do things when my body and my mind and my spirit were completely decimated. And I traced this back in my own lineage, my own just lifetime, to when I was 14. And basically, right, I now, looking back, understand that I had autism. So I had Asperger's syndrome that was undiagnosed. So, and all of the physical problems that caused. So having no female, like very, very, very low sex hormones and very, 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 very high cortisol at all times, which meant that my digestive system had never functioned for my entire life. My immune system was completely decimated. Like, I was in a state of complete physical shutdown and mental, emotional shutdown because, again, having such extreme neurodiversity meant that, oh, okay, sorry about that. If that's irritating, I thought they weren't going to do construction today. Hopefully they won't do too much drilling. But yes, I apologize in advance for that being annoying. I was like in this state of just like mental, emotional, spiritual, physical shutdown. And like I said, like especially the mental and emotional side, because I was really, really, really like no boundaries, super empathic, could feel what everyone was feeling, could hear what everyone was thinking. Like I could feel the world's chaos and how not okay everyone and everything was, but I was like a child that couldn't do anything about it. And my friends were mean, and school was hard, and everything was just really, really overwhelming. And so I was at this place of just like complete exhaustion, complete burnout, complete, I have nothing left in the tank at like 14. But then quitting and just sitting on the couch, I realized no one was coming for me. Like, no one was coming to help me out. And the world wasn't changing. And if I had just left myself sit there, I was probably not going to get back up, right? Like, my caregivers didn't know what was wrong with me. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. Teachers didn't know what was wrong with me. And it was kind of like I got to this place where somewhere inside of myself I realized that if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done. And I was just completely alone. And like I said, like I just like felt like if I didn't figure this out for myself, it wasn't going to get figured out. And I was exhausted and I had nothing left, and I was completely just depressed and anxious and physically depleted and all of these things. And basically, I had to motivate myself to get up. I had to motivate myself to get up. Because, like I said, if I hadn't, I don't think I would have recovered. I think I would have, I either would have physically died, or I would have, like, gotten so behind in school, or just that spiral would have taken me downwards. And I, like I said, I don't know how, if or how I would have recovered from that. So this trauma of, if you don't keep going, you're gonna die, wasn't something that I just like made up in my head. That was a nervous system trauma that actually happened to me physically, that I carried with me for years and years and years and years and years, and that I'm still working to rewire and rework. That rest is safe because I experienced in my actual experience that rest was not safe. Okay? So that's the first thing I want to offer you, is if you're in this state where you have an extreme aversion to rest, and that rest feels stressful for you, and you don't feel safe taking a break, look at your history. Were you abandoned? Was it shown to you that resting or taking a break or not being on top of it and not keeping going, not doing things for other people, got you abandoned, got you rejected, got you shamed, right? Was it that the only time you ever really got positive attention or anyone saw you or you got your needs met was through helping or serving someone else? So now anytime you feel like you're taking a break or you're being selfish, it feels terrible because it's in your nervous system that the only time you're accepted, the only time you're approved of, the only time you get that love that tells your nervous system that you're going to get what you need is when you're helping other people, is when you're serving other people. And then also, so right, look at your own history. When you are afraid of asking for help, is it because when you asked for help, help didn't come? Did you have situations where you asked for help and then the people who helped you then later told you they resented you for having to help you? Have you had people, like I say, shame you and abandon you and ridicule you for needing help? Have you been told that you were weak? Have you been told that that was not okay? Have you maybe even had caregivers or people that were helping you and serving you, and then you could see that they weren't okay, right? So even if they weren't like intentionally wanting to make you feel bad about helping you, was it that you had overdrawn caregivers just in general and you were an empathic child who could feel and see when I need help, and like it's really draining on caregivers, and that's bad, right? That I'm the reason caregiver is so exhausted. I'm the reason caregivers are not doing well. And did that get programmed into your nervous system? That when you need help, it really does take from someone else. When you rest, it really does take from someone else. And they don't have the resources to be okay. So now you're causing all this damage. There are going to be things in your nervous system that showed you that rest was not safe. And then globally and culturally, our culture tells us that the only thing that makes you worthy and valuable and good enough and acceptable is what you produce, is how productive you are, is how much you're getting your life, right? Especially now, even with like influencer culture, it's not even anymore about like past generations. It used to be like you need to be productive because the society needed you to be productive, right? We have to also understand where we're coming from as a humanity, which was that forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, survival has been very, 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 very hard. Okay? We also can't put ourselves in this vacuum, in this bubble, where we're kind of one of the first generations where we have so many systems in place and so much technology and so much resource distribution that so many of us are in this state where we don't really actually have to work hard, and things can be okay for some of us in this world. Not all of us, obviously. Huge, large portions of the population are still in poverty, and these technologies haven't reached the globe. But there's large portions of humanity now that are kind of, like I say, out of the food chain and are getting to a place now where we really actually don't have to work hard to make the systems keep functioning, even the way that our parents did and their parents did. So that's the other thing, is the constant, you got to be productive, you got to be producing something, you got to be providing something, you got to be doing something for the collective. Again, we came by that honestly because literally up until about a generation or two ago, that was how we survived as a humanity. If people weren't pulling their weight, we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the systems, we didn't have the distribution, we didn't have the understanding that we could keep society going without everyone participating. Okay? And then even as the kind of corporatist culture started to get going in the United States, especially like during the world wars, when the United States especially started to recognize that they could really profit off of war, and that like getting the people to kind of self-sacrifice, and this also came long time before that, tribal leaders and monarchs and other government rulers, of just this idea of like it's noble and it's good for you to sacrifice yourself for the good of the society. And a lot of the time, that sacrifice of yourself for the good of the society was actually for the good of the head of state, the good of the monarch, the good of the government, the good of the whoever or whatever was in charge. And like I say, in the Western world, we're seeing more of the this consumerist mindset that we've got. This like you're supposed to be continually producing. You need to be continually productive, continually all of this stuff. We can see that the root of that is making sure that you're continually consuming, right? That you are continually exhausted, that you're continually stimulated, that you're continually in this state of stress, so that you feel like you have to be working all the time, you have to be productive all the time, you have to be providing something all the time, you're supposed to have all this, what you're supposed to be doing to give to society. But if you do that right, by society standards, if you are living the way everyone is telling you you're supposed to be living, this means that you're chronically exhausted, you're chronically overstimulated, you're chronically stressed, you're chronically depressed, you're chronically disconnected, and therefore, you're an excellent consumer. We can sell you Netflix, we can sell you junk food, we can sell you convenience foods. You then need to drive everywhere, and you drive your car to the gym to run on a treadmill, and then you buy a smoothie, and then you buy your lunch, and then you go to work, and then you go home and you have to drink the bottle of wine and watch the whole Netflix, and then you're addicted to your phone because that stimulates you, right? Like, we're addicted to social media so much because when we disconnect from social media, when we disconnect from the constant, this is what's going on in the news, this is what's going on in politics, this is what's going on in the government, this is what's going on with your friends, this is what's going on with celebrities, this is what's going on with woke culture, this is what's going on with the vegan movement, there's the constant drama. When we don't have that, again, we don't have anything stimulating our nervous system, and then we're exhausted. Okay, so if we really look at this culture that we have around what it is to be a good person, what it is to be productive, and then like constantly needing to keep up with trends and what's popular and what are people doing and what are people liking, right? Like we have this nervous system trauma that says being accepted and being loved equals safety. And we're all unconsciously riding that nervous system program. And then capitalist culture is preying on that by continually feeding you what's cool, what's popular, what's in, what's. And then you, like, and it doesn't matter how kind of even like mainstream or out of the mainstream you are. Every group has this is who you're supposed to be, this is the new thing, this is the new drama, this is the new, like, how you have to speak, this is the new how you have to be, how you have to dress, these are the new things that are good, things that are bad, things you should be buying, things you should be boycotting, blah, blah, blah. There's this, like, constant barrage of you gotta stay on top of it. Because in order to be in with whatever group you're trying to be in, the trend is constantly changing. Right? And like I say, it doesn't matter how, right? You don't follow Kim Kardashian, you don't follow style, whatever. But, right? Like, look at all the other communities. It literally doesn't matter what community you're in. The rules are constantly changing. Every day, there's a new something that you've got to be on top of. And if you aren't, your nervous system gets triggered that you're going to die because you're going to get kicked out of your tribe. So, is it any wonder that all of us are afraid to rest? Okay? And then, like I say, this constant, now the world has capitalized on this very innocent idea that we all have like a purpose, and that we all have like a blueprint and a thing we're here to do and a thing we're here to be. Okay, now I want to speak to this because this has been completely robbed of us through capitalism, in that now everyone feels like they're supposed to have this huge, great purpose, passion, thing they're supposed to do and thing they're supposed to be. and you're supposed to be getting your life, like I say. So now maybe you don't follow Kim Kardashian, but we have the Instagram um, influencer culture, and that is in every single, like, that's in spirituality, that's in health, that's in fitness, it's in science, it's in education, it's in all of these different areas of like these guru people who are out getting their lives, right? Like they're whatever traveling, they're making a business, they're monetizing that special thing about themselves. And so then like this idea that we maybe we want to leave the matrix, we don't want to work our normal 9 to 5, we don't want to do all that, we want to take some time to like figure out who and what we are, and then we just feel like we don't ever find it. We have this chronic stress and this chronic like, who am I supposed to be? Because we're expecting that like we're supposed to this, like when we discover ourselves, it's going to be this great thing. It's supposed to be this great thing that's monetizable in the world the way that we have it, and then I'm going to be like productive and excited about life and doing this great radical extreme getting my life purpose thing that's helping the whole world or that's doing something fabulous, and we feel like we're failing when we don't find that. And then we, like I say, we try and push ourselves to find that, we try and figure out how to monetize what we think we like, we do all this stuff, and then we're continually burnt out and exhausted. And again, it's because that is not the point. That is not reality. Okay? So this is why when I talk about finding your purpose or finding your meaning or finding whatever, I'm talking about finding your enough. Finding enough. Because what our culture has taught us is that we're supposed to be excessive. We're all burnt out and exhausted at this point because culture and the trauma of not having enough for so long, the trauma of humanity not having enough for so long, has pushed us into excessiveville, into overconsumption, overproduction, overdoing it. And yes, right, this absolutely keeps the billionaires billionaires. It keeps the millionaires millionaires. It keeps the people in power, because the people are not focusing on enough, finding their enough, and then just living their simple life that's genuinely pleasurable, because that's not good for continual profit motivation, right? So like I say, there's so many things tied up in this fear of rest. And then, like I say, the flip side of the coin, the feeling like you can't ever motivate yourself, the feeling like you can't ever get yourself going, like you never figure out what you're supposed to be doing, or what you want, or who you're supposed to be, or even if you have these dreams of who you think you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, you get so overwhelmed that you can't take any steps towards it, and you constantly sabotage yourself, and you constantly, like can't get there. You get totally overwhelmed, and then just take no steps, and then just like end up sitting there doing nothing. Flip side of the same coin. We're either like working ourselves to the bone, trying to live up to this capitalist consumerist idea of the constantly productive, constantly inspired, constantly helping or creating or outputting influencer savior person, or in the attempt to try to figure out how to make ourselves that, we get so overwhelmed and so burnt out and so exhausted that we can't do anything. And it's two sides of the same coin, because it's that idea that we're all supposed to be Steve Jobs or Oprah Winfrey that's killing us. Okay, so the bottom line is, some of us are meant to be Steve Jobs. Some of us are meant to be the Oprah Winfreys of the world. There are some of us who have these big, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do something big. And you know if that's you. Because if that's you, you have been driven by that your entire life. Okay, so I can kind of speak to that a little bit. Like me doing what I do. This is who I've been my entire life. Me running perception trainers and doing this work and whatever, I can't do anything else. This is who I've always been. This has always been a part of my DNA. I did not have to figure out what my purpose was or what I wanted to do with my life. I've been doing this my entire life. Okay? So if you're one of those people who has a thing like that, you know, because you can't do anything else. There is nothing else. And you, just speaking for myself, I have to moderate doing other things in life that are also important, because my tendency is to sacrifice everything for this, and that's not healthy. And that's part of my thing that I've had to heal in myself. So for the people out there who have this, and I want to speak to this too, the people out there who are so afraid to rest because you feel so guilty that you're not doing enough and that you're not helping enough and you're not, like, that's the savior complex that isn't actually true. Okay? So here are some solutions I want to offer for people who are afraid of rest. And I'm going to give a whole bunch of things to talk to several different categories of people. So for the category of people that are like the Oprahs, the Steve Jobs, the you have a calling, you have a passion, you have a thing that you're doing and you're doing it, and you're constantly burning yourself out while you're doing it, you're going beyond your scope of practice. Okay? You're pushing yourself beyond what your actual capacity is to serve. Because yeah, you're here to serve. Yeah, you're here to help. Yeah, you're here to do things. But if you're constantly in burnout, if you're working from when I rest, I feel guilty. I'm not good enough. Who am I to rest? This isn't. I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of this. That's toxic fuel, and that's savior mentality. That has nothing to do with reality. So here, let me tell you this. It's the same thing I tell myself. You are not going to fix the world. You are not going to save humanity. It is not going to be because of you that the world changes. Okay? Even the Steve Jobs, the Oprahs, and whatever you think of those people, the Bernie Sanders, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, the Mother Teresa's, which, I mean, if you look into her, that these people who had these savior mentalities a lot of the time, and like, right, we're seeing this now over and over and over again with these gurus and all these spiritual people who had all this spiritual power, and they were very abusive and out of alignment behind the scenes. It's because that entire way of thinking, the Jesus mentality, is totally out of alignment with how reality works. Okay? And I believe, what I have seen, is that everyone who believes in this savior mentality, I'm going to save the world, I need to be doing whatever I need to be doing because I am the one who's going to change humanity. You either destroy yourself, right? You run yourself into the ground, you become a martyr, and you burn yourself out to the point where you can't recover, or we become abusive leaders who are making up for all that, overdoing it via abuse and crime and literally completely taking advantage of people. And this happens because it's out of alignment with reality. That you have to keep stimulating yourself in some way to keep yourself going like that. And it's unhealthy. So the bottom line is, not any one of us is going to change humanity. We are all here to play a role, and if you're burning yourself out or relying on toxic fuel, okay, so toxic fuel is, I'm not worthy of rest, I'm not good enough, who am I to rest, who am I to take a break, there are so many other people who have it so much worse than me, I should be doing more, I need to be involved with this thing, and I need to be up on this thing, and I need to speak to this thing, and every new group of people who are being shown to me as being um, infringed upon. I need to stand up for them. I need to be a part of every cause. I need to be a part of everything. I'm never enough because the world is constantly suffering. The world is always going to be suffering. There are always going to be people who are not doing well. There are injustices happening. Okay? There are so many issues in the world, and you are not going to fix all of them. And honestly, you're not going to fix any of them. You are going to be a part of the solution only if you figure out how to moderate your efforts so that you can give what you can give without burning yourself out or becoming someone who has to cope in some sort of abusive way. Because when we push ourselves past our limits, we don't just get new limits. We have to then cope in some way. Something always has to give. And that we need to recognize that we are finite. We are finite human beings with finite potential, finite reach, finite capacity. So literally telling myself, you are not going to change the world. You are not the reason. Anyone is anything. Anyone is going to be anything. I do what I can do. I do what I can do. Because of course, like I said, I'm not here to just live for myself. When we fully understand, we get that sovereignty isn't what we want. We don't want to just live our lives for ourselves. It is not satisfying to just have your liberation. What we all want is to play our role. So I have figured out my scope of practice, where I can serve, where I have capacity, where I have skills, what I can do. And it's pretty specific. I am not speaking to every issue. I am not standing for every person, everything, right? The world is full of things. I have found my thing that I know to speak to. Emotional mastery, healing childhood trauma. That's what I talk about. And I don't go beyond that. And when I try to go beyond that, I get overwhelmed and I get overstimulated. And then, right, in my personal life, I donate money where I can. I donate time where I can. I don't overdo it and I don't underdo it. I figure out my enough, what I can do, where I have the power to help create the world I want to create. And then, right, with my personal choices, how I choose to buy my food and to source my food and to source my clothes and all these things, because I have those resources. But I don't go around saying that everyone should be doing that, because lots of people don't have the resources that I have. So it's not up to them to be mindfully consuming. You see, we all need to figure out where we truly have our power and to let that be enough. Okay? So we have to get real about our savior complex. You're not going to save the world. But you can, as much as you can, do the best you can, and you should do it. But if you're getting overwhelmed, if you're getting burnt out, you're trying to do more than your scope. And that doesn't actually serve anybody. So that's the first thing. Second thing, expecting that every single person is supposed to have this, like, you leave society, you don't participate, you're an entrepreneur who's a spiritual entrepreneur who's constantly independent and doing all that. No. Okay? Finding your purpose, finding your passion, finding your enough in this life. We need to let go of what we think that means. There is absolutely nothing wrong with working a normal job that aligns with your values enough, that gets you enough of a paycheck, that you can live a simple life where the rest of your time you're doing your hobbies and you're doing the things you love doing and you're spending time with people you love and you can cook your own food and you can be kind of out of the consumerist mindset. And that's your life. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think for most people, that's what life should be. When we really wake up to what human beings want and need, again, we're going to find that the answer is enough. There's this metaphor of this man who has a fishing boat. And he's got his little boat, and he catches a couple of fish during the day, enough for himself, and he maybe sells a few fish to his friends, and then spends the rest of his day doing whatever he wants to do, working on his boat, hanging out. And someone comes to him and is like, you should invest in a bigger boat and more fishing rods and some staff. And the guy goes, why? Well, because that way you could catch more fish, and then you could sell those fish, and then you could have a business. You could make money doing this. It's like, okay, well, why would I do that? It's like, well, yeah, so that you could have money and have a bigger boat and have all these things and work towards your retirement. And you can save for your retirement. And he goes, okay, so save for my retirement to do what? And he's like, so that in your retirement you can just have a little boat and fish and have your simple life. You see? That was the point. He already had it. He literally already had the boat where he could work on his boat, catch his couple of fish. That was his simple life, and then he just enjoyed his time for the rest of the time. And this is what so many of us are caught up in doing now, in the Western world especially, is we're working so hard to have all this stuff, to have all this meaning and all this purpose, and this we're supposed to have this big life. And we're not even seeing that we want that because we just want to be able to relax and enjoy our lives. And now we feel guilty for having a quote-unquote simple life, because we're feeling like we're supposed to be out there getting it. And it's again, if you really want those things for yourself, you will have the motivation to do what it takes to get those things. Like I said, for me, to move to Asia and start my online company and all that stuff, even through the burnout and even through all that stuff, I had enthusiasm for it. I wanted to do it, even though I was burning myself out. There was still this thing that even now that I've chipped away all of these other things, this is still here. And I've kind of always had enthusiasm for it. Okay, but when you're finding that you literally don't have enthusiasm for whatever it is that you think you're supposed to be doing, it might be because you really actually don't want to do that. And what I'm saying is, I have found for myself and for the people that I've worked with, that again, it's not about discovering this grand thing. It's about discovering what is your enough. Because that was the thing that drove me out of the Western world. Was the constant life maintenance of that reality. You have to have a car, and you have to have an apartment, and you have to have all these things you got to maintain, and clothes and fashion and style, and like I say, the constantly being up on, and the constantly busy, the schedule full of stuff because you're getting your life and you're socializing and you're blah blah blah. And to me, I was just I cannot keep up with this. I'm never going to be able to keep up with this. I don't want to have to live this life. And I think for a lot of us, we need to hear that it's okay. And I want to make this clear right now. It's okay to live a simple life where, like I said, you work a job that's enough for you. And then maybe you downsize your apartment, you downsize your wardrobe, you don't need the car, you simplify things. Okay? We simplify. And then we figure out what our enough is. And so, like I say, like speaking to the people who are like, okay, well, I gave up everything, I quit my job, and then I couldn't think of what I wanted. I couldn't find my purpose. I was just stressed the whole time. Yeah. Because when you're putting all this pressure on yourself, that like, right, I let go of the thing that I know. I let go of my security. And now I have to figure out how to monetize some little thing that I may or may not even know about myself. Right now I have to fully discover myself and then figure out how to monetize it and then figure out how to make it popular and then figure out how to make it happy. And then I gotta also be like Instagram and do and changing the world. And well, of course you weren't able to do that. That's ridiculous. That's so much pressure. And then, like I say, the people who get frozen in place and can't make a move, that's probably why. You have this huge expectation on yourself that you're supposed to be this great thing and that life is supposed to be this way. And it's too much. And I say, like, if all of us who have the capacity to find our enough, maybe, like I say, you stay in a kind of like matrixy job or whatever, but you do it in a way where you work just enough and you make just enough that you can spend the rest of your time doing whatever you like to do. You fish in the morning. You tinker with your boat. And then that's enough. So now what do you want to do with the rest of your life? The blue zones. That's how they live their life. The blue zones are the places where the people live the longest. And we constantly look at them in their diets. And we're trying to figure out what it is in their diet that makes them so healthy and what. If we zoom out, the thing they all have in common is, number one, they all have access to plethora of resources. All the blue zones are in places that are naturally rich in natural resources. So they don't fear not enough. They all have a community of people around them that they're connected to. And they all work just enough so that it works for the whole community. It's pragmatic. Everyone's doing the thing they like doing, the thing they're good at doing, just enough that everyone gets what they need. And then they spend the rest of their time at the beach with their families, painting, making art, music, dancing. They're not all trying to monetize their passion. Because again, if you're one of those people who wants to do that, do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. But if you're one of those people who's like, I am not good enough and I haven't found it until I become one of those people, no. I think in reality, when we start to have actual healthy societies, when we really figure out how to redistribute resources properly, we're going to see we don't want all this constant productivity. Because like I say, right, the people at the top of these systems that we have right now, these corporatist government power systems, have had to sacrifice their humanity to get there. It's not working for them either. Celebrities are not happy. Gurus are not happy. Government officials are not happy. The people who are out there living there, getting there, they're not happy. They're exhausted. They're also running on toxic fuel. Not enough, not enough, not enough, not enough. And then it keeps us raping the earth and destroying each other and fighting to keep rights away from other humans and all these like crazy things that we see going on in the world right now, where we have these systems of just political and education and all these government bodies genuinely pushing people down, genuinely hurting people. genuinely keeping people not having what they need and their rights taken away from them. It's because of, again, of this myth of more for me is better. So if we really want to change the world, again, all my talks come down to this. We need to find our enough. It's not about how it looks on the surface, right? Like we have to let go of this idea of if I'm doing it right, like I'm a radical hippie, or I'm famous, or I've monetized my passion, or whatever, like all these stories we're telling ourselves. No. To really be someone who's changing the world, when you find your enough, and then you're not an over-consumer anymore, and then you have figured out, this is who I am, this is what I like doing, and this is my contribution to society. Right? So it's not all about you, it's not all about society. It's not about getting more than you need, it's not about being okay with having less than you need. It's, what do I need to do within the system that exists to have enough? Okay, and then this is where we're all traumatized. Because so many of us in this system that we live in, that is built upon not enough, didn't have enough. And it's really hard to have enough. And so we have trauma around resting, and we have trauma around not pushing ourselves and not keeping going, because there's no safety nets in society. Because there's so much of just this every man for himself. You always have to be working, you always have to be striving, you always have to be grinding to have enough. And that's why I say some of us do need to just like downsize and get rid of things that we think that we need that we don't actually need. And then right there, and then there are people who really don't have enough, and we need to change the system for them. So that those of us who have enough stop taking more than we need. So that we can change the system and demand a redistribution of resources. And demand more justice for everyone. Because we're not so caught up in, do I have enough for myself? So where we can we find our enough? Stop pushing past our scope of practice. Realize we're not going to save the world. But also that we don't need to be these great whatever. And for those of us who can, what is your enough? What is your enough? And work through the trauma of being abandoned and not having enough and not being protected and being told you're not good enough and you have to do more and you have to be more and you have to give more. Right? It's going to be different for all of us. Some of us do need to say, like, look, I'm traumatized to rest because the other shoe always did drop. There wasn't enough. There isn't enough. And in that, and like, right, asking for help was bad because I didn't get it, or I got scolded, and I got abandoned, and all of these things. That's where that self-love work comes in. To heal those traumas is not easy. But we start with compassion for ourselves. That rest was scary, and that there's a reason we're afraid to rest, and it's not because we lack self-love. We're traumatized. This society doesn't work for any of us. This every man for himself society doesn't work for any of us. It's traumatized all of us. So the reason you're afraid to rest is not because of you. The reason you don't know what your purpose in life is not because of you. The reason you can't even figure out what your enough is or how to make that work in the system is not because of you. And the more you love yourself, the more you are tender with these parts of yourself and curious about these parts of yourself. Where did I get traumatized around rest? Where did I get traumatized around who I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to accomplish? The more you can have compassion for these parts of yourself, curiosity, okay, the more you will start to evolve. And like that's what happened with me. It's just more and more and more. I realized things I didn't actually need, I didn't actually want. I simplified my life so that I only have to do the things that I can do, that I'm good at doing, I figured out, and like I said, like with perception trainers, I always promised myself that I would never make this my source of income because this is my passion project. And I didn't want it to be something that I had to figure out how to monetize because I didn't want to have to compromise anything of it. So that's what I'm saying. If you have something like that, you know. You don't. And then I would say, if you have something like that, take the pressure off yourself to ever monetize it. You don't have to monetize it. It's totally and completely okay to work a job that pays the bills so that you can have your passion and not have to compromise it. You are under no, you do not have to monetize your passion. You do not have to monetize your passion. You do not have to monetize your passion. It is okay to figure out enough so that your passion can be your hobby. It is okay to check out of consumerist culture where you have to have all the latest stuff and be in the latest trends and all of this, and you have to be getting your life. What do you want? What would actually be enough for you? What are the things you actually want to experience? Okay? And if you're exhausted right now, it is not your fault. You did not traumatize yourself. If you can't think of even one thing that you're passionate about, that is not because of you. And I would suggest letting that go. When you actually rest enough, and you truly actually rest, what you want to do will be natural. You will want to do it. And until then, figure out the bare minimum of what you got to do to survive in your life. And work on these traumas of telling yourself that that's not enough. Be with the part of you that feels like that's not good enough and you should be doing more and do. You need to love yourself for who and what you are right now. You gotta make it safe. We don't grow and become inspired and do great things from places of anxiety and stress and expectation. That will naturally come out of feeling safe. And we feel safe in our nervous systems when we feel loved and accepted for who and what we are right now. So if you really want to find your purpose, love and accept yourself for who and what you are right now. And then take the expectation off of yourself that it has to be any specific thing. That you have to be the next Oprah. No. Whatever it ends up being for you, let it be that. So if you are the next Oprah, good, go do it. If not, if working your 9 to 5 so that you can paint on the weekends and then have a good time with your friends and have your apartment or your little property or you can make your own food and you don't have to be an overconsumer is good for you, then you're living your purpose. And that's good for everyone. Because now you're not one of the people. Because, right, the huge part of the problem, especially in the Western world, is our overconsumption. We're chronically overdoing it. And so right now, checking out of the system is figuring out what your enough is and working your life around that. Like, that's the greatest thing you're going to do for humanity in this time. Is checking out of this over-consumerist culture that's destroying the world, that depends upon exploitation of people, of children, of plants, of animals, of the earth. Not taking more than you need. And then again, not taking less than you need. Either. I'm not saying that people who are literally in poverty should be okay with being in poverty. No. That is not the other thing that we come to. Is everyone deserves to have enough. So if we are someone who is taking too much, we can downsize. And then we can do a little bit to help redistribute the resource. We can be the kind of people that say, okay, this is enough. I'm not going to take more for myself. So if I'm collecting more, where can I redistribute it? Where can I give my time? Where can I give my energy? In the scope of what I can actually do. Not more than that. Not relying on toxic fuel. So it's a balance. Okay, but if you're afraid to rest, the big thing, is you gotta love that part of yourself that got traumatized about rest. And you gotta look at our society and you say, okay, yeah, no, it's not my fault. I'm being told I'm constantly needing to be productive and there's no safety net. I'm all by myself. We gotta start working towards community so that we don't have to feel this way so much. So like I say, those of us who can downsize should. Let's focus on community. Let's focus on not every man for himself. How can we start to build this world that we want to live in, where it is safe to rest? Because we're not all by ourselves. We are working together. And it starts with getting on your own side. Being nice to yourself, compassionate about yourself. Doing the emotional mastery work, all this stuff that I talk about. But like I say, the big takeaway here is it's not your fault that you can't rest or that you can't motivate yourself. And the first step of that, right here, right now, if you take nothing from this video, is to make yourself safe that that is happening. Learning to be with these parts of yourself that are exhausted and running on toxic fuel or completely overwhelmed and can't do it. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault. Society taught you this. Look for your traumas. Love yourself in these places. Start to meet your own needs of love and acceptance for where you are. Acknowledge where you don't have enough, and that's really scary. And start taking just these little steps of either downsizing or doing just one little thing towards helping yourself every single day instead of, I have to figure this whole thing out, right? Come into your present moment, do one step at a time. And if you're totally exhausted and can't think of anything, make it safe. Figure out what you gotta do today and just do today, right? We all get super overwhelmed thinking about the future, and if I'm like this forever, I'll never have what I need and I'll never have what I want and it's not safe. I hear you. And the way forward is just every single day, it's just going to be doing what you need to do today. You're not going to figure out the grand plan of how to get yourself out of your rut. You're going to do just one little thing every day. Be with yourself a little bit more every day. Show up for yourself every single day a little bit. We don't get out of debt in one fell swoop. We get out of debt by one payment every day. So just focus on today. What is my enough for today? How can I move through today? How can I love myself a little bit more today? How can I support myself and be compassionate and curious with myself a little bit more just today? Do this every day. And you'll figure this out. You will, over time. And understand the systems aren't set up right now for us to be in a state of calm. It's not your fault. The systems are messed up. And the more of us that take our power within it and demand that things are different through our own actions, not overdoing it, not underdoing it, the system will change with us. So where can you find your enough? And then be in your community. That's a purposeful life. Okay? So it's not your fault. Love yourself for who and what you are right now. Show up for yourself today. Be here with you today. What is your enough today, and how can you do it just today? You will figure it out from there. Okay? I love you. You're good enough. You're not going to save the world. It's not all on your shoulders. You're not going to change the system all by yourself. It's not up to you. Only do what you can do. Okay? Okay. world is not balanced. It's not set up for everyone to have enough right now. But we can be a part of that. We need to be a part of that by first figuring out what is our enough, how can I live my life enough, right? Put my life jacket on, and then start to live that for other people in my community. It's enough, that's the answer. Not more than we need, not less than we need. Enough. And then our sphere of influence, the more we become balanced in our enough, the more we have the sphere of influence to pick a thing that we're going to fight for. And we'll understand we're not going to fight for every issue. We're not going to solve every issue. We're not going to be part of every issue. But there will be a thing that's a thing for us. And then if everyone did that, we'd have a totally different world. So do what you can do for all of us. Okay? We're all going to do this together. Let's do this together. Find your enough. It's okay. Love yourself. You're worthy of that. It's not your fault. You didn't create this system. None of us alive created these systems. We inherited this, so what are we going to do with it? Okay? It's different for everybody. There is no, this is what everyone should do. Everyone should love themselves. Get curious about themselves right now. Meet with their own traumas right now. And then, where is your enough? And then what can you do for the community? Okay? Okay. See you next week.